Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode 32 of the Be Great podcast. It's your boy back for another episode on this lovely Friday. We're going to get into a number of topics today. We're going to get into the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night on my birthday. And then we are going to get in to some other things. Sorry for the pause right there. I did not mean to pause. Then we're going to get into some other things. We're going to get into recruiting. We're going to get into game picks. We're going to get into the transfer portal. So yeah, that's kind of the order we're going to go through things. We'll start off with the playoff rankings. That's kind of most important, especially with it being, a week away from it being official. And I got a lot to say about a number of these topics. So let's just get right into it, shall we? So, the playoff rankings. What do I like? What do I don't like? Overall, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. And that's a reoccurring theme with these rankings every week is that they're not the worst thing I've ever seen, but they're not good either. So, as pretty much everyone predicted, Oregon 1, Texas 2, Penn State 3, Notre Dame 4, Georgia 5. It was really after that things got interesting. Where do they put Ohio State? Where do they put Tennessee? Where's SMU, Indiana, Boise State? And then really, how do they rank Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina? So we'll start higher up the list and work our way down. Let's start with Ohio State and Tennessee. So Ohio State is 6, Tennessee's 7. I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb. Because here's the thing. The committee continues to want to change their narrative about how they want to rank these things. Because apparently all of these narratives, like how many losses you have and this, that, and the other, and oh, how bad is your loss? How late in the season did it come? Apparently that matters to everyone not named Ohio State. I just need an explanation as to how Georgia loses on the road against a ranked Ole Miss team who's currently ranked 13, but I think they were ranked better than that when Georgia lost. Georgia dropped 9 spots. Ohio State just lost at home to their rival, a team that only won 7 games and can barely throw a forward pass. Ohio State only scored 10 points and lost, one of the most embarrassing losses quite possibly in program history, and they dropped 4 spots. How are they ahead of Tennessee? Yeah, Tennessee has a loss to Arkansas. That loss is not more embarrassing and is not worse than Ohio State's loss. Because A, Tennessee was on the road, and it was way earlier on in the season. Like, what are we talking about right now? That loss for Ohio State's terrible. Why are they ahead of SMU? Why are they? I guess I can understand why they're ahead of Indiana. At the end of the day, they beat Indiana. I think I think I would put Ohio State around 8 or 7. The fact that they're at 6 is stupid. How are they still locked to get a home playoff game? How is that even possible with the performance that they put on the field? Why is Tennessee having to go on the road to Ohio State? If they play tomorrow, you cannot tell me that you don't think Tennessee would lose. Tennessee looks way better than Ohio State right now. Like, it's not even comparable. Ohio State, it looks awful right now. There's people talking about Ryan Day being fired. If this was still the 14 playoff, Ryan Day would be fired right now. I think. It's stupid. But this committee has a clear bias to two teams in particular. We'll get to the second one later. The first one, though, is Ohio State. You move down, and we'll talk about the second team that the committee clearly has a bias towards, and that's Alabama. I don't understand, because this is the second time this has happened this season. We can go back. I don't remember what week it was, but there was a week where Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia were ranked back to back to back, and Miami was ahead of all three of them. And then we had a week of play where all Alabama did was blow out Mercer. And for some reason, they got to go ahead of Miami, but Ole Miss and Georgia had to for some reason, stay behind Miami. And now, once again, for some reason, Alabama gets to be ahead of Miami, but not Ole Miss and not South Carolina? What makes Alabama worthy of being ahead of Miami, but not Ole Miss and not South Carolina? South Carolina is the hottest team in the country. They have a ton of ranked wins. They have a win over the number 17 team, Clemson. Ole Miss has a win over the number 5 team, being Georgia. Alabama also has a win against Georgia. But Alabama has a loss to Vanderbilt, and more importantly, a blowout loss to Oklahoma. Yeah, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, which is bad. And they lost to Florida. They didn't get blown out in any of those games. The problem South Carolina has, and it's the problem I mentioned on Tuesday, the problem South Carolina has is that they lost to Ole Miss and Alabama. But the fact of the matter is, if South Carolina played Ole Miss or Alabama today, I think I'd pick South Carolina to beat them. But that gets into the whole discussion about is it the best team or is it the most deserving? And I think it has to fall somewhere in the middle, but it's hard to do that. Of course, Alabama's going to find a way to sneak in this thing. The only chance Alabama has of not making it is if Clemson wins the ACC championship. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Clemson wins the ACC championship, SMU will fall, but they should still be in. They should be in ahead of Alabama. They should be the 11 seed. It will be an absolute travesty if Clemson beats SMU and SMU falls just right out. They're the first ones out just so they can have Alabama in the playoff. An SMU team who went 11-1 in the regular season, while Alabama went 9-3, isn't even playing for a conference championship game. It's going to be once again a year where Alabama gets benefited from not even being in their conference championship game. And it's an absolute travesty because we just assume they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. Guess what? They're not. They haven't proven that they are. Did you see that Oklahoma game? That was one of the worst Alabama performances I've seen in years. Years. The Vanderbilt game, awful as well. And the problem is, each game had different problems. The Vanderbilt game, it was a defensive problem. The Oklahoma game, it was an offensive problem. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It'll be interesting to see how the conference championship games go and if that will affect the rankings really at all. Mostly what it'll change is seeding. Like if Georgia loses, how far will they fall? That's my question. I think it would be stupid if, let's say Georgia loses the SEC championship game. I think it'd be wrong for them to drop us below Ohio State and Tennessee. Because at the end of the day, we had the same record as both of them in the regular season. And the only reason we would have an extra loss is because we played an extra game. But I guess we'll see. I have no faith that the committee will do the right thing, though. Like, Georgia should be locked in for, at worst, a home playoff game. At worst. Even if we're the 7 seed, that's fine. That's fine. Give us a home playoff game. Let us host Indiana. See how that goes for your little darling up there in the Big Ten. Give me a break. They don't want to come play us in Athens, as you can tell. The if you've been watching my episodes at all this season, you would know that the college football playoff rankings have continued to hurt my brain. So let's get into recruiting, shall we? We had early signing period. It's technically still going on. I think. I think kids can. I think it ends sometime tomorrow. I know Justice Terry, a 5-star, is supposed to make his commitment tomorrow, which should be interesting. He's projected to go to Georgia. That would be a huge get for Georgia. But we will see where he ends up going. As of right now, I'm looking at 24/7 Sports. That's just the one I always look at. I know some people like to use On3. I just like to use 24/7. So Texas is currently at 1, Alabama's at 2, and Georgia's at 3, Oregon at 4, Ohio State at 5. Those are the current rankings. This could obviously change because we're still going to have we still have to have National Signing Day, which is in I think February. So there will still be some movement going on. We won't know who's truly going to end up with a number 1 class because, I mean, from Texas to Ohio State 1 through 5, it's very narrow leads. So a lot can change. If Georgia gets Justice Terry, I would imagine they would at least move to 2nd. I'm not exactly sure how the points work, but I would imagine that'd be the case because that would be their 6th 5-star. But recruiting, early signing period was interesting for sure. Texas obviously had a great day. Alabama and Georgia did about as you would expect. Ironically enough, Alabama, the top 15 recruits in Alabama only got 1 of them. And yet they still did just fine overall because they were able to get a lot of recruits from a lot of different states, mainly Texas. So that was really impressive out of Kalen DeBoer in his first recruiting class. Auburn had a good day. They came up to 6th. They dominated the state of Alabama, which you kind of imagine would happen. Hugh Freeze is a great recruiter, and that's why Auburn's not going to get rid of him. Oregon probably had the best day. They flipped a ton of recruits. Dan Lanning did this last year, and he's doing it again this year, where they just throw money at people and they just start flipping. Ohio State had about as much of a day as you would expect. Ohio State and Georgia right now and Alabama are the 2 very consistent ones you see in the top 5, top 3. So nothing too irregular there. Michigan had a good day. It's good that oh my gosh, Sharon Moore. I almost forgot his name. It's good that Sharon Moore was able to kind of right the ship. It was looking like a down year, and then they were able to get Bryce Underwood, and then it feels like from that moment, it's just been up and up for that program. LSU, I mean, look, they got ravaged. They had a ton of flips, but they were able to right the ship. They were able to keep DJ Pickett, which was huge for them. Florida, Billy Napier had a good day. It was supposed to end up being better. There was a ton of recruits that were rumored to flip to Florida that ended up not. But overall, I think you have to be satisfied with the 11th class currently if you're Billy Napier and if you're a Florida fan. But yeah, I'm just, I always love recruiting. I always find it interesting. I think Georgia, speaking on my team for a second, I think they addressed things that they needed to address. They got their first 5-star wide receiver in Talon Taylor, although it depends on what site you look at if he's a 5-star. But in my heart, he's a 5-star. This is their best wide receiver class I think in the Kirby Smart era, period, with Talon Taylor, Thomas Blackshear, Landon Walden, something like that. CJ Wiley, So really good receivers. They got two of the top three tight ends, I'm pretty sure, with oh my gosh, how do you pronounce his name? Is it Elias or Ellis Williams, who's a basically a Darnell Washington, and then Ethan Barber, who's basically like your Brock Bowers type. Um, and then they addressed the offensive line and the defensive line, which I really like to see. They got a number of offensive linemen: Juan Gaston, Dontrell Glover, Cortez Smith, and Mason Short, and there's some others as well. They also got a lot of defensive linemen. Elijah Griffin being the main one. He's a 5-star, top 5 overall player in this class. He's the best player in this class that's not a quarterback. So, you love to see him, and Justice Terry, same thing as well. So you love to see that, Kirby's recognizing the deficiencies on our team, on Georgia, and is trying to fix those. The wide receiver's been a problem for years. It was hidden by the fact that Ladd McConkey was as good as he was, and Brock Bowers was basically he was basically a wide receiver who played tight end. So that was able to hide the deficiencies, but it's really come out this year with the drops and with just the inefficient play from the wide receiver group. And the defensive line has been disappointing for a couple of years now, basically since Jalen Carter and, oh my gosh, Jordan Davis. Since they left, Nolan Smith as well, since they left, it's kind of been a disappointing time with the defensive line. But hopefully it's going in the right direction. And yeah, it's kind of what you expected. It wasn't really as much of a hectic recruiting day as it's been in past years. I know last year was crazy. Georgia flipped KJ Bolden, and so it was crazier last year, but it's still always fun to kind of watch for me. I always enjoy watching that stuff, just like I enjoy watching NFL free agency closely. But let's get into game picks, huh? So, look, I'm not going to pick like the MAC championship or anything like that. I'm picking the main ones, and I'll pick UNLV versus Boise State as well. And I guess we can start there. UNLV Boise State, look, I think this is actually a dangerous game for Boise State. UNLV is a good football team. Ricky White, tremendous wide receiver. Jalen Catalon is a tremendous safety. Boise State, I think, has actually gotten worse as the season's gone on. I watched their game against Oregon State, and there were things I was impressed by and things I was not impressed by. Ashton Jeanty is going to do Ashton Jeanty things. That's just a fact. But can their quarterback make the plays necessary for them to win the game? That is the question. And you know what? I'm actually going to go with the upset pick here. I'm going to pick UNLV to upset Boise State. I think that Boise State has been on the verge of upset for a while now, and I think UNLV will get it done. Give me the Rebels. Next, we'll go Arizona State, Iowa State. This one's hard to pick for me. I think it's probably the hardest game to pick for me, actually. Just because I could see a number of things. I'm going to pick Arizona State because they have the momentum, because if you have a player named Scadaboo, I'm not going to pick against you unless, you're facing like Penn State or something in the playoff. Then I might pick against you. But in this scenario, I'm not going to pick against you. Kenny Dillingham has done an amazing job this year, head coach of Arizona State. They have the momentum. They have all of that. Iowa State had a tremendous start to the season, has fallen off a little bit, but has righted the ship. And I think that offense is a little broken to me. And I think Arizona State's going to go in, get it done, make the playoff. And I'll be really happy for them. Clemson is facing off against SMU. This one, a lot of people have, said this is a hard game to pick or whatever. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Clemson wins this game, and I'm pretty confident in it. For a number of reasons. I think the offense is not as bad as people make it out to be. I think Cade Klubnik is not as bad as people like to say that he is, and as much as people like to think that he is. But most importantly, I think it's this defense that's really making me think that Clemson's going to win. This defense is nasty. This defense is really good. By the way, Clemson, big loser on recruiting day. Unfortunately for them, it's looking like they're just going to be falling apart these next few years. But it is what it is. But I think Clemson's defense will be able to shut down SMU enough for Clemson to get a win, and then it'll be really interesting to see where things fall and for the college football playoff rankings the following Tuesday, or actually they might do it on Sunday, the day after, because it's teams need to know so they can start preparing. So that's probably the case, but. I'm going to go Clemson, and I feel pretty strongly about it. I feel pretty confident in that pick. Let's see. What's next? Penn State, Oregon, huh? I've seen some people think this game's going to be, very close, and it could go either way because Penn State does have a good defense. But I just think Oregon is just so much better than this team. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. James Franklin in a big game, he doesn't win. Do I think they can keep it somewhat close? Of course I can. They have a good defense. Of course they can keep it close. But they're not going to win because they don't have the offense to win. Drew Aller is not that guy. Nick Singleton, not that guy. They don't have a receiver that's that guy. They don't. The offensive side of the ball is trash. Okay? It's trash. Oregon's going to win this game, and they're going to stay undefeated, period. And they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, period. Next, we got, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, Georgia, Texas. As you know, because I've stated this 1,000 times, I am myself a Georgia fan. I don't like playing good teams twice in a season, especially considering we might see them for a third time. But a number of things are going into my decision to pick Georgia. A, I'm a fan, and as I've said before, unless Georgia is absolutely horrendous, I'm not picking against them because I'm loyal to my team. But I will look at this game honestly. I'm not just going to try and I'm not just going to pick Georgia and then come up with every reason as to why Georgia's going to win. I'll tell you things I'm worried about and things that I'm confident about for this game. Obviously, what I don't like is having to face a team twice. What I do like is that we played them in Austin, beat them by 15. I mean, we manhandled them. And now they have no home field advantage. This is a neutral site game in Atlanta, a game that Georgia is very used to. A lot of experience in this game. And I think that will favor Georgia, favor Kirby Smart. I worry, and also what I do like is that the main reason that Texas was even competitive in that game against Georgia was because Carson threw interceptions. He threw 3 interceptions. So that's really the main reason that Texas was even competitive in the game. And Carson has cut down on the interceptions. Since Florida, he's been playing really well. Yes, even in the Ole Miss game. The Ole Miss game was not his fault, as I've said. He's been playing really well. He played really well against Tennessee, really well against UMass, really well against Georgia Tech. What I worry about our defense. Our defense did not play well against UMass, and our defense did not play well at all against Georgia Tech. And that worries me going into this Texas game. Our defense is going to have to return to the form that we saw them in against Texas in order for us to get this done. They got to play well. They cannot continue to allow wide receivers to be wide open. They cannot continue to have their eyes in the backfield. They have to put pressure on Quinn. They have to. If they don't, they're in trouble, plain and simple, because this defensive back room cannot cover for very long. They just can't. I've seen it over and over again. I think what also benefits Georgia is they have an extra week to prepare. They played their game on Friday night. Texas played theirs on Saturday night, so Georgia had an extra day to rest up and prepare. I know ETN is possibly back for this game. He's listed as questionable right now. I would love to see him play, but I also understand if Kirby and the crew says, you know what, we're making the playoff no matter what, win or lose. So we just want to make sure ETN is available for the first round of the playoff. We don't want him to get to play when he's not 100% and get more injured to where he's out for the entirety of the playoffs. I would understand that. And I wonder if that has, going into this game, I wonder if Texas and Georgia are going to give it all they got. I wonder if they're going to show everything offensively in their playbook to try and win this game, or if they're going to keep some things close to their vest because they know that they know that they're both in the playoff no matter what. So I wonder if they keep some things close to their vest to save for the playoff. I just wonder that. Although personally, I would love for Kirby and the boys to go all out to try and win because I want that bye. I want that bye week if I'm a team. The bye week is so important because it allows you to rest up before a grueling grind of a playoff that you're going to have to go through. And it allows you to get healthy, most importantly, which Georgia could really use, especially at the running back position. But I'm going to pick Georgia to win. I think it's going to be a closer game than it was last time. And it would not shock me if Texas wins in the revenge game. And it would not shock me if Georgia and Texas meet for a third time, to be honest with you. But it does kind of make me sick to my stomach to think that Texas might win the SEC in their first season in this conference. But it is what it is. All right. Transfer portal. Oh, boy. So, obviously, I talked on Tuesday about Julian Humphrey entering the transfer portal, that bum, and I was so happy that he did. Since then, what's happened? Well, Jackson Arnold, I think it was today, it was Thursday, hit the transfer portal. I could totally see him. I saw a list earlier where it listed, I think it was Mississippi State, Georgia, and then I think it was Auburn, the other team. Auburn's been listed for like all of them. I could totally see Georgia maybe taking an interest in Jackson Arnold, but I don't necessarily think they need Jackson Arnold. Personally, I would love him at Mississippi State. I think that'd be interesting for sure. I think Mississippi State could definitely use him. I saw Miller Moss enter the transfer portal. My prediction for Miller Moss is for him to end up at Iowa. To me, that just it screams an Iowa move to get Miller Moss, just like they got McNamara. By the way, my prediction is that Julian Humphrey is going to end up at Texas. That just feels like what he would do. Oh man, there was one. Oh, Caden Salter. So Caden Salter into the transfer portal. I can already tell you, I'm very confident that he will end up at Auburn. I'm very confident that Caden Salter is going to end up at Auburn. He had his best season with Hugh Freeze, and I think Hugh Freeze is going to want to, reunite that relationship. And Caden Salter can have a nice 1 or 2 years while Deuce Knight kind of learns on the bench until he's ready to play. Mateer, the Washington State QB, he's 100% gonna go to Oklahoma because Venables hired the Washington State QB coach or offensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator. So I think Mateer is going to end up in Oklahoma. Was there anybody else? I feel like I'm missing somebody. But that's all I can really remember as of right now for the transfer portal. I'm sure there'll be a ton more that will end up transferring, and we'll cover them. I'm sure there'll be some shocking ones that we'll end up covering. But I think that's all I got for this episode. Thank you for listening. I hope everyone has a great day, watches some conference championship college football. I hope your team wins, unless you are a fan of the Texas Longhorns. And have a great day.